So, the past couple weeks have been actually completely insane on so many fronts. And on a personal front, my daughter and granddaughter moved back into my house. I had some personal health issues going on. My, my son had to be quarantined from school for 2 weeks, so he was back home. Like, there's just been so much going on in the past 2 weeks. For a woman who doesn't have a job right now, I feel like I can't, either I'm doing nothing, which was several days in the past couple weeks, or I can't, I'm spinning out of control. These are the two extremes of my life right now. So, as a result, I'm catching up on an egads amount of articles, podcasts, videos, YouTubes. I'm not into the TikTok scene, although my daughter talks about it and shares with me some of the influencers that are there. But for the most part, I prefer like articles, things where I'm getting what I would consider some level of primary sources. In news articles are questionable in that. But okay. But there's been a few things that have been really bugging me in the last couple days as I'm doing all this catch up and trying to figure out what I want to talk about and what is going on in the world right now that is pertinent or that I need to talk about before we don't talk about it at all. And the first thing that really starts to stand out to me and just kind of drive me a little batty is that so many articles that I read, articles in particular, like news articles, but it also happens in clips from news shows when I don't watch news generally, and I certainly don't watch any of the major cable news brands, Fox, MSNBC. I never watch any of that crap. Stuff, whatever. To me, that's, they have a clear side, and if you want to feel comfortable with messaging coming at you that you agree with, then you watch them. That's not my style. But as I'm reading articles, I keep seeing these, I guess the word that I want to use is influencing language, where they're already trying to tell me how to think about this particular information they're about ready to share with me, while also in some ways, particularly when it's like a news clip and somebody's reading this information off a teleprompter, I'm also supposed to care about who is sending me this message, and more importantly, what they think. Why would I care what a news person thinks? Why should I care what a news person thinks? But it happens all the time. Just a few notes, because this has morphed into something way bigger, but I didn't want to lose track of this particular component of concern I have, because it started the ball rolling. And it's the way that we talk about, we say, we hear and read things like crushing waves, half of all. In this particular aspect, it was half of all Republicans think this way. And I was like, really? Half of all of them? You polled every last one, and you know that half of them feel this way? Because I'm guessing that's not how that happened. And or we get the things have doubled. We have, or tripled or quadrupled or are 10 times as worse. And whatever it is, it never gives you a number to start out with. So wait, things doubled from last week, and last week it was 1 and now this week it's 2. I don't know. How would I have any idea? Because you're just using this flagrantly dramatic, sensational language without telling me anything about what you're talking about. Giving me any number to start out with. Is it 10,000 this week and next week it was 20,000? Okay, that's concerning. But if it was 2 this week and next week it was 4 and there are 5 million whatever people or whatever involved, I'm trying not to point out specific stories because it doesn't happen with just specific stories is my point. I put 2 times, 3 times, and 10 times, etc. because I read 3 different articles where I was given these multipliers without having any idea, and they were about 3 different topics actually, if I remember correctly, having any idea what the number, what was 1 times it, because that'll help me understand what doubling it is, or tripling it is, or 10 timesing it is. Give me something to work with here, because if you're just telling me something has changed by twice, that doesn't tell me anything. And I'm purposely avoiding using examples because the reality is if I gave a singular example of an article that I've read recently where I saw this, I would have people jumping down my throat defending the article simply because I'm saying something that's counter to what the current mass media is messaging. And this happens to me regularly. So I felt that was really a point I wanted to put out there. And so as I'm going through this and I'm reading these articles, I dig into something about, I start looking up into logical fallacy arguments. I found my very first kind of search, I saw there was 15. I was like, that's interesting. I think I kind of remember 4 of them real well off the top of my head. Straw man, red herring, ad hominem, justifying bases on science or religion, or using an argument that nobody can win is basically what it is. I'm going to put a pin in this one for later because I thought that I was mostly going to talk about that tonight, and I've done some pretty interesting research on it, but I got definitely sidetracked from that. That's another night. And this is all thanks to MoFax, which I will be the only link that I put with this podcast is the episode I'm currently listening to, which I believe is 54. But the link will be with the podcast or blast or, wherever you are reading this, you will also have the link available if you want to listen to the MoFax show, which I definitely encourage, because then the one thing that I really kind of hit on for me was conspiracy theory. This term is everywhere. Everywhere. You hear it, you see it, people are saying it. It's everywhere. If I say that I think the sky looks pink today and somebody else reported that it was absolutely blue, I would be accused of having a conspiracy thinking theory. I might be a little ridiculous at this point. However, you cannot say anything that doesn't kind of line up with what the major mass media messaging is without being called a conspiracy theorist. I promise you. My kids try to tell me all the time I need a tin helmet. I honestly do not feel like a person who is a tin helmet wearer. I'm a critical thinker. I have questions. I have ideas. So I decided that I was going to look into exactly what is conspiracy theory. And I found a couple of interesting definitions. Merriam-Webster, I'm a little less trusting of these days. I don't know if it was a woman, but apparently that particular website will update definitions almost immediately. So I'm far less trusting of their definitions, but I found a definition on dictionary.com for conspiracy theory that I thought was pretty good. And it actually gives 3 definitions, but I'm just going to read the first one, and I'll put the link to this too. I guess I'm going to put more than one link. I lied. Whatever. Okay, so number 1, it's a noun, obviously, conspiracy theory. And it says, a theory that rejects the standard explanation for an event and instead credits a covert group or organization with carrying out a secret plot. And the reason that I think that's important is because it's not just you're saying something that's countering a messaging you're hearing. It's you're saying something is being so super devious that there's like a secret plot happening against it. Like, this is not just me saying, I don't know if I agree with this, because I'm hearing other stories. I'm hearing other people say things that also make sense and are logical to me, but seem to be something I can stand behind, because all the other information I have seems to line up with that too. So I did do a little more searching on conspiracy theories, and I did find a website of 30 of the most popular conspiracy theories. I have no idea. Some of these I've never heard of. Some of them I've heard plenty of, and so I'll put the link there. There's some good standard ones, like, the moon was something, and Elvis faked his own death, but number 17 was that Paul McCartney had died, and that there was and was replaced by a look-alike, sound-alike imposter. I've never heard this conspiracy theory. I'm like, what? That's wild. Like, this is something that people believe, because, I didn't really get turned on to Paul McCartney until the 80s, so I guess I only know the imposter. Who knew? Anyways, there's some interesting ones in here. There's definitely a lot that I have zero idea what they're talking about. And that's how that goes too, right? So, as I'm starting to dig into this, I started digging into it a little bit, and then I had to, my daughter was working, so I had to watch my granddaughter, and I'm also trying to catch up on podcasts, and I find Mo Facts has a new podcast that came out a couple days ago, I'm sure probably Saturday, and I finally found it today. And I really thought I was going to spend tonight talking about logical fallacy arguments that, and conspiracy theories. And instead, Mo says, Mo says 2 things. The first thing he says that gets me on another hiatus is that we're a republic and not a democracy, which is absolutely true. And I found, then I went to look up the differences between democracy and republic, because, explaining that's really tough. And I found this great link on thought.com, and it's like it. I don't know if it's an article. It says it was. It's got a table of contents. It was last updated. Well, it said updated November 2nd, but it didn't say when it was originally published. This looks like a pretty interesting website I've never checked out, so I'll check it out some more for sure. But they have, right out the gate, they have like key takeaways. And it says Republic versus democracy. So just in case any of you are confused, we live in a republic. I guess that some people are calling it a representative democracy. This is like the new, like, softer term. But we live in a republic. We, for the most part, you don't vote on the laws that are passed for your state. You don't approve the money that's spent on the roads that your tax money is going to. That's done by representatives, which is what is the difference between a democracy and a republic. If we were a democracy, we would vote on every single thing that happened in every single aspect of your life. Like, every single thing. You would have an opportunity to vote. Who would do that? Nobody. I wouldn't. So we have representatives that we vote into place that we believe will do things that are in our best interest. Vote in the way that's in our best interest. This is how this works. But in case you're interested, the first part has some great key takeaways, and then right below it, there's a great table that talks about who the power is held by in a pure democracy versus a republic, how making laws happens, what it's ruled by, what's the protection of rights, and and then it goes on and on and on. And I read some of it, and it's very interesting, and I will almost certainly read some more of it. And it's got some good references at the bottom, which I always like. When I guess this is an article at the very bottom, it says cite this article. So this looks like an article that, like, maybe somebody in high school or community college might use as a source in a paper type of a article. But it's interesting. Anyhow, he says that he talks about that, and then, just to blow my mind and completely switch my brain around, he starts talking about the rights of people who have committed crimes in this country, and the fact that once they have completed their sentences, meaning you've served all your time and you've been released, you were released on parole and your parole is now done, whatever completing your sentence looks like, the moment that happens, all of your rights as a citizen of this country should be reinstated. And I completely agree. 100%. Cannot understand. I don't know about you. I know quite a few folks in my life who either still do not currently have any of their rights reinstated because the states in which they had to spend that time in order for them to get their rights reinstated, they actually have to go back through the court process and argue why they should be reinstated to them, which I think is absurd. Who's going to do that? Not to even mention the fact that if you have been convicted of felony, you have to mark a box on every single application you apply to in any place. Or you are going to go through a background check, because that's, like, if you work, when I went to work in my previous employer, there was an extensive background check that was done on me about my education and my criminal, and had to go through the drug testing thing, the whole thing, right? So if you get a job in, say, the service industry, On every application, it blatantly asks you. Or if you get hired or apply for a job at a larger company, the likelihood is that you will have a background check. So one way or the other, if you, as a person, have committed a crime and finished paying your sentence even 10 years later, that's going to come up. It is. It follows you for the rest of your life. And I don't want to crack into this too hard because I really, really believe that we have an issue in this country where we are a large amount of people are saying things like Black Lives Matter. But at the end of the day, we're not doing anything to really make that true. Because we're focusing on superficial crap. And I'm not saying that police brutality is superficial, but it's so like it's there and it's a problem and it's causing injuries and it's causing hurt and it's fucking people up. Sorry. F-bomb. But it's not the same thing as holding down a vast percentage of the black, particularly male population, from being able to vote, from being able to exercise their actual individual rights in this country. And we keep doing it. And we justify it. And nobody's fixing it. Because we're not actually addressing the specific problems that we have in this country. The specific problems that we have in this country is that we have a republic, which means that you do not get to vote on every single law, which means you should absolutely have some idea about what the people you are voting in to office at your local level. I'm talking city representatives, school district representatives, like they're judges. There is a vast majority is the wrong word. Variety is the word I was looking for, of people that are making decisions that directly impact your life on a daily basis, that you are voting for without really having any idea what they stand for or what they're trying to accomplish or why they are voting in certain ways, because a vast majority of us check a red box or a blue box. And that's not okay either. If you are just blindly down the ballot ticking off all the people who are on one side or the other, then you are doing yourself a disservice. And, maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist. Maybe I'm just saying things that wild wackadoo people who believe that we didn't land on the moon or, I personally have no reason not to believe that. I don't understand why it's a conspiracy theory or why people even care. Like, okay, if it did happen, if it didn't happen, okay. And if it did happen and we just haven't been able to do it again because that was our technology is not just changed with the clothes we wear and everything else, but it also has changed with the machines we're using, and those things are evolving so incredibly fast that it makes it very difficult for people for it all to line up so that nobody gets hurt. Because I remember when Challenger blew up. I remember socking some kid in the face who made a horrible joke that I thought was completely inappropriate given the situation. So I just hauled off and hit him. Because that was the kind of girl I was. Like, anyways, sorry. I digress. I strongly encourage people to stop letting the media tell you how to think about things or tell you should care how the people who are presenting the information to you is caring about things. Stop using the word conspiracy theory every time you hear some sort of messaging that doesn't jive with what you believe. You don't have to accept it or believe what the other person is saying. Just stop shutting it down and turning your ear away from it, because maybe there's some information in there that might be important to you, even if it's not something you currently are comfortable with. Just give yourself a moment to listen. I dismiss shit all the time. I listen to people and think, that's an interesting point. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't actually buy into that or believe that or find that to be accurate, but that's an interesting point. I'll pay attention and see if that comes up again, or if anything brews on it. Like, it doesn't, listening to somebody else's opinion or listening to a messaging that's different than what you have isn't the same thing. And stop being freaking hypocrites. Like, all of us need to stop doing this. You cannot stand on one side of something and point at the other side and say, you're wrong, while we both sides are standing on a mountain of completely, what is the word I'm looking for? Subjective type of policies and behaviors that we have been putting on the lower folks, the less social economically wealthy folks, both parties are subjugating and trying to make a permanent underclass. And while they are both doing this, they are both accusing the other side of being the people who do it. I'm going to do more on that for sure. I'm definitely going to talk way more on a lot of this stuff. MoFax turned my one singular podcast about, I think I started calling it fluidity and language was where I thought I was going to go, into like 4 podcasts. So there's a podcast. I keep saying podcast, but I guess these are blasts. Well, this is starting to turn into a podcast. I'm almost at 30 minutes. But it's logical fallacies. What rights should all people have? Like, that's something I'm going to delve into. There's a whole thing about this Anthem Gibbs. I'm right at the end of this episode that I'll be posting. By the time you are listening to this, I will have for sure completed the episode. And he's bringing a whole new thing I've never heard of in my life to the table. So I know this has been a little bit all over the place, and I know I've covered a lot of ground because it's been a wild couple weeks. So I just needed to get some of this out, and I hope that if you're listening to this, you understand that I'm not trying to tell anybody what you're doing is wrong. I'm trying to encourage people to think about how you're interacting with other people who maybe don't agree with you, who maybe have some different ideas than you, looking at what you're actually being told by your politicians, what what your actual local representatives are doing for you. I'm just saying, open your mind to the fact that there is so much information out there. It's hard to keep on top of all of it. But if you start shutting stuff down because it simply doesn't jive with what you're thinking, you might be cutting your own nose off to spite your face. And that's what I have to say tonight. It's been a long one. I hope y'all hung out there with me. Please, absolutely, if you have any comments or suggestions of things I should check out, or just want to engage in a healthy, respectable, reasonable debate with me about anything I've said, let's do it. Y'all take it easy now. We'll talk to you soon.